Elon Musk was on a bit of a tear yesterday discussing the amazing advances in the next versions of full self-driving, and the last thing he said might be the most important not just for Teslas, but for everybody on the road. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Please forgive if you hear any rumbling. We are having some thunderstorms rolling through the area, so it might be a little bit rumbly. But I want to get right to it. There are several posts from Elon Musk in the last couple of days that give us some real insight into how amazing the next versions of full self-driving will be. Starting with this one, the latest version of Tesla's supervised self-driving will blow your mind. Now, yes, he has said this over the years, and some people have called him out. He said it in 2020, 2021, 2022, I think 2023 as well, and he said it'll blow your mind. And people are laughing at him saying, yeah, you've said that before. But I think it's important to contextualize this. At every point, he was actually accurate. It did blow our minds. When we got Full Self-Driving 9, it blew people's minds. When we got Full Self-Driving 10, which I actually had access to and drove for a while, it blew my mind. It was absolutely amazing for the state of the art at that time. When we got 11, it really blew people's minds because they were like, wow, this is way, way better. And then, of course, with 12, that's a complete rewrite, ground up, neural network, photons in, controls out. That really has blown people's minds. And of course, Tesla AI has been able to iterate on that very, very rapidly. So we're seeing incredible progress. And thus far, each version, 12.3.3, 12.3.4, 12.3.5, etc., those have all been mind-blowing, but somewhat iterative. But the interesting part is when we get to full self-driving 12.4, and that's what Elon talked about next. So in response to Elon saying, probably we'll start rolling out 12.4 next week, Farzad replied, cannot wait to see the improvements. With full self-driving 12, the 12.x releases have been pretty major. This version should take advantage of Tesla's big jump in training compute. And of course, if you don't know, one of the big unlocks that Tesla has been able to do is increase the amount of training compute they have radically over the past several months. And Elon has said that they're no longer compute constrained, which means that if they can suck in the right data that they need, they can retrain the network very, very rapidly to make these huge improvements, which is why we're seeing these really, really rapid iterative improvements basically every couple of weeks. So here's where the fun really begins. In response to this, Elon said, 12.4 has almost completely retrained models. The final touches are for comfort, as it sometimes accelerates or brakes too fast for most people's taste. So 12.4, of course, is the next major version of full self-driving. Elon has said previously it should be called, full self-driving 13 because it's such a major advance. And of course, if they're completely retraining the model from the ground up, that means that it really is a whole new version of this. So this won't be just a little point release update. This is going to be a completely retrained model with new data involved, all of that kind of stuff. So it should be a very, very impressive update. And of course, he said it's going to blow your mind. That's the kind of thing he was talking about. And interestingly enough, the final touches are for comfort, not for safety. So they're not worried about critical interventions and stuff. What they're worried about is making the driver more comfortable, making them feel better about the vehicle. You don't want the car just, coming up against cars ahead of them and just slamming the brakes on, and you're uncomfortable. Is it going to stop? Is it not? And then it's actually using the brake calipers instead of using the regen braking and stuff like that. I don't mind the acceleration so much. I actually would prefer that it would continue to accelerate rapidly, but maybe it's, really stomping on the gas pedal there or the accelerator pedal. Maybe it's doing that kind of a thing. And so maybe it needs to be a little more chill about accelerating that rapidly. But anyway, this is a comfort thing, not a safety thing. And that's very impressive in its own right. Did you know that according to the EPA, air pollution is up to 5 times worse in your home than outside? That means every moment you spend at home or at work, you're risking your health. Thank goodness I found today's sponsor, Neoplants, maker of NeoPX, the first bioengineered living air purifier. You wouldn't drink polluted water, so why breathe polluted air? NeoPX is the perfect solution. Rather than buying an expensive, bulky, and power-consuming electric air purifier, you can use nature itself, supercharged by science, to purify the air around you. NeoPX was invented by PhD scientists to be up to 30 times more efficient at fighting indoor air pollution compared to regular houseplants, making it the perfectly quiet, living and breathing air purifier that also looks beautiful. NeoPX is a gorgeous, fully grown Marble Queen pothos plant. I mean, look at it. It's absolutely beautiful. That's great in low life, a self-watering planter that shows you when you need to water the plant, and the magic touch Neoplant's bioengineered plant microbiome that eats harmful air pollution like volatile organic chemicals that can harm your health. And it's super easy to use. Just add power drops to the soil once a month, set the plant where it can get some sun, and water when the green indicator disappears. It couldn't be simpler. As I'm sure you know, I'm a data nerd, so I bought an air quality monitor just to see how well NeoPX did, and it exceeded my expectations. As you can see here, the volatile organic compounds, or TVOC, went from 0.546 milligrams per cubic meter down to only 0.016 milligrams per cubic meter with my NeoPX. I'm breathing easier already. Be sure to click the link below or scan the QR code to get an extra power drop sachet when you order your NeoPX. That's 7 months of pure air. Thanks again to Neoplants for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to use my link to get a 7th month of pure air when you order a NeoPX. And now let's get back to it. So what, might you ask, could you do in the next versions if we're already getting to comfort levels? Well, we go to the very, very edge cases, the corner cases, as people call them. 12.5 and 12.6 are in various stages of testing, which means they're already mostly trained at this point. I'm not exactly sure. I assume that that's what he's saying if they're just in stages of testing. So it's going to the QA people, being run in simulation, etc. We're getting into rare, complex situations. For example, going down a narrow one-way road, encountering a road closure, and having to reverse out to find a new route. So number one, reverse, that has not been available in full self-driving up till now. That will be amazing when that actually comes to pass. Number two, encountering, things that are very, very rare, like you're in a single lane road, you can't get out of it, you've made an incorrect turn, there's a dead end. Those kind of situations don't arise every day, but of course they do arise once in a while. And you could imagine other ones where there's, a tree in front of the road or something like that, and you might have to turn around because you can't go around the tree, or maybe you can drive around the grass or something along those lines. So there are weird edge cases that only happen every once in a while for us humans, but with enough billions of miles being driven on Tesla and Tesla full self-driving, they can pull in exactly the data they need. And one of the incredible things that the Tesla team has done is create an incredibly efficient data ingestion flywheel. They're able to pull in exactly the clips they need, and they're able to use the cars. They can use the inference compute in the vehicles themselves to figure out which clips they need. They can flag it and say, like, show me every time a tree falls across the road and your car has to stop and back up and go the other way and find a detour, right? You can just say that. You can flag that sort of a situation. The word goes out to all of the vehicles on the road. When that happens, and it happens rarely, but again, with billions of miles being driven, they can pull that stuff in. They can ingest that data, they can train on that data, and they can learn how to handle those incredibly rare edge cases. This is something that nobody else can do because they don't have this kind of data. So this is a massive advantage that Tesla has that nobody can catch up with. And then really interestingly here at the end, that closure also needs to be communicated to the rest of the fleet so you don't get a whole bunch of Teslas stuck down a road. And that comment is big enough, I'm going to come back to it in just a minute. But first, let's turn to Holmars, who responded to Dirty Tesla about the steering wheel nags, which are rather annoying in the vehicles. And Chris, or Dirty Tesla, says he is going very long periods of time without having to touch the steering wheel. I'm not finding that personally. I'm only finding it every 60 seconds or so. It nags me. So I'm not having the same experience, but he is obviously having a good experience with fewer and fewer nags. Holmar said, the nag has no reason to exist anymore, kill it. And Elon Musk says fixed in 12.4. So if you notice at the bottom, I said woohoo down there, but then you have to think about this a little bit. That's very, very cryptic. Either Elon means it's fixed, so there's no more steering wheel nag as long as you're looking at the road, which again, Tesla has a camera internal to the car, which is looking at you and making sure you're paying attention. So that's the primary way of ensuring that you're actually paying attention to the road. So maybe they fixed it and gotten rid of the nag entirely, or maybe they fixed it and made the nag much more aggressive again. So Elon never responded to this as far as I know, so nobody knows what he means by this. So either the steering wheel nag is gone, in which case celebrate, or it's gotten much more aggressive again, and we're going to have to do it every 30 to 60 seconds. So we will just have to wait and find out about that. And then apropos of this, as I was driving home last night, I was thinking to myself, let's just say, screw driving myself. I have full self-driving. And Elon liked that post. So obviously I got a lot more views than I normally would on that post, but I do stand by that. It feels like being a noob to have to drive a car yourself anymore. I really, really like full self-driving. And even when I intervene, Really, really, really rarely that it's for safety critical things. Mostly it's just for my convenience or because the navigation information is incorrect, which goes back to the ability of Teslas to be able to get out of bad navigation situations, or it's because I just want to drive for a few seconds. But generally speaking, I let full self-driving handle most of my driving now. So before we turn back to Elon's last comment, let's look at another couple of things. Metaphor, responding to Team Tesla, said 12.4 focusing on comfort is a very big deal. This means the team has started to run out of critical takeover issues, which again aligns with exactly what I was thinking. In my opinion, it doesn't mean they are all solved in the current model, which also makes sense, nor necessarily in the next model. It likely means they have all been assigned to a team to work on, and that's an interesting insight. This is an important step, as before that moment this wasn't the case. 12.5 and 12.6 being tested now means they have a healthy practice of training the model, and after a significant amount of change, forking the new model. So this is just coding speak for meaning that they have a really good pipeline for going from figuring out what the new architecture is going to look like, to ingesting the data, to training the network, to testing the network, to putting the network out, that kind of a thing. They've got that worked out very, very well at this point. After 12.4 is finished, 12.5 will need to be re-baselined on top of it. Each will likely be targeting a higher and higher bar of 9s. The same is true for 12.6. So what this means is they can't just train each one of these in sequence and then ignore the previous versions, because what they have to do is you have to roll it out to millions of customers, let them drive it, find the weird edge cases, the things that don't work quite as well, and then re-baseline the next version and retrain it, or at least partially retrain that new network to take account of that new baseline. So that's where we're headed with that, and that's a really good insight from Meta. And then he quotes Ashok Eliswamy, the beginning of the end indeed. And Ashok a few months ago put that out cryptically, and the idea is that they are so far along in full self-driving at this point that it's the beginning of the end of the process. They've actually figured out how much longer it's going to take them to get significantly better than the best human driver. And now finally, let's turn back to that last paragraph that Elon wrote. Holmar's catalog said this is incredibly significant, and when people will start to see the real power of having software drive our cars. And my response to that was, it seems like you're the only other person who's noticed this. That was the biggest bit of the post by far, and I actually think that that is true. Then CERN responded, eventually no more traffic jams. Tareem responded to CERN and said, how is this not similar to using Google Maps where we can see traffic jams? And CERN responded, it's not about seeing traffic jams, it's about not creating them in the first place. To which I responded, yes, the Teslas can pay attention full-time, unlike humans. For example, not everyone uses or pays attention to Google Maps if it says there's a traffic jam. Rerouting can happen nearly instantaneously with very little data needed to be uploaded and downloaded to the network. This is a feature of future traffic patterns people have talked about for decades, but it seemed like science fiction until now. It won't solve everything just yet, as only Teslas will have this tech, but as more and more other cars license full self-driving tech stack, it'll become a bigger and bigger factor in solving traffic issues. Might I suggest to Tesla AI, and they're probably already doing this by the way, create an open standard for communicating traffic between cars using standard cellular data for uploading and downloading the data. Many cars have cellular capabilities already, and thus might be able to at least receive information from the standardized communication, which will start alleviating traffic issues even more rapidly than could be done if the full FSD stack was needed to do this. So basically what I'm talking about here is the fact that once Teslas can communicate with each other, they can start to instantaneously adjust driving patterns and navigation to account for traffic jams, for a tree falling across the road, for whatever kind of situation is arising. They can adjust for that very, very rapidly. And as opposed to humans who don't generally pay attention to Google Maps and stuff like that, and often just drive without navigation anyway, so they're just kind of clueless, as CERN said, the Teslas can get out of traffic jams by simply not being there. They can just reroute and adjust without the user even realizing it. They just go a different direction than they were originally. But of course, as I said, there's a limit if only Teslas are using this. So my suggestion is that Tesla creates a standardized communication protocol where Teslas can broadcast to the network and say this exact situation is happening, whatever, a tree fell across the road, there was an accident, there's construction here, it's starting to back up, whatever, and that any car that's on that standardized network, including like Google Maps or Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or whatever, that they can receive that data at least. They can't broadcast yet, but they can at least receive that data, and if they do that, then all vehicles will be alerted to this, and it can help to alleviate the traffic more rapidly and more expediently expansively than if only Teslas know about this. But even if it's just Teslas at first, that's going to be an amazing appeal to having a Tesla, is like you don't have to get stuck in a traffic jam anymore because the car will reroute itself automatically and you won't even realize that you would have been in a traffic jam if you'd kept going the other direction. And of course, with rapid communication and full self-driving being enabled, it can do this in near real time without the user even really knowing that it's happened. So all in all, really amazing stuff from Tesla and the AI team. I can't wait to start using version 12.4 of the software. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video and subscribing, it really helps the channel to grow. So thank you so much. And finally, a big thanks once again to Neoplants for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to use my link in the description to get a 7th month of pure air when you order a Neoplant. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.